They were put out of the camp whenever leprosy came on a person. They were put out of the camp for 7 days in order for them to be cleansed. And they were cleansed. If they had gone through cleansing, God would say, be away from the congregation for 7 days, and then go, after you've gone through the ritual cleansing, go show yourself to the priest, and then you'll go through a ritual cleansing, and then you can rejoin the camp. So he said for 7 days, your father would have put you out. And so what happened is, as the Lord continued to talk here, Moses interceded. In verse 12, please do not let her be as one dead. Verse 13, Moses cried out to the Lord, said, please heal her, God, I pray. And the Lord said to Moses, if her father had spit in her face, would she not be shamed 7 days? Let her be shut out of the camp 7 days, and afterward she may be received. And so Miriam was shut out of the camp 7 days, and the people did not journey till Miriam was brought in again. Afterward, the people moved from Hazarah and camped in the wilderness. That's interesting. This woman, this murmuring, this complaining, this prophetess caused the whole camp to have to stop. The progress of the whole camp stopped because she and Aaron put their mouth on the God's leadership. And that was the church in the wilderness. The camp was the church in the wilderness. They could not move. I wonder how much progress don't we make because of people opening their mouths. In principle, this is still true because of people biting on the leadership, the order of God. And what you don't realize is that person is the gift of God to you. That leader in the house is the set gift of God to you. So I wonder how much death do people walk in? How much leprosy was a type of sin, and the judgment of leprosy was a type of literally death working in the body. I wonder how much death people are walking in because they're so flippant with their words. Yes. Well, you'll hear that? Pastor Ross says that she was a prophetess and she criticized Moses' wife because she was black. And some authors say that because she criticized Moses' wife for being black, that God turned her white with leprosy. Leprosy literally is one of the worst. We read about it. I don't know how many of you actually read the lessons, but leprosy is it is probably the worst manifestation of sickness and disease in the whole Bible, because people would white patches would appear on people, and their skin would begin to rot, and they'd take and put rags and try to cover up, and depending on where it was, they literally would announce unclean immediately because it's very contagious. They had to live away from their family, live out in leprous camps outside of the camp. And so this was when God struck her, and he didn't say that God sent a destroyer or that God said, I will allow you to be. When God struck her with leprosy, that was severe judgment. Let's get over to chapter 13. The spies sent into Canaan. I'm not going to read all of chapter 13 because I do want to try my best to go make it 13 and 14. But we're doing pretty good as far as we've covered a lot of ground. And in chapter 13, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, send men out to spy out the land in Canaan, which I have given to the children of Israel. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send a man, every one a leader among them. Look at verse 16. So these are the names of the men. You begin to see a list of them, the names of each head of each tribe. These are the names of the men whom Moses sent to spy out the land. And Moses called Hosea, the son of Nun, Joshua. Moses called him that. Look at verse 17. Then Moses sent them out to spy out the land of Canaan. And he said to them, go up this way into the south, and go up to the mountains, and see what the land is like, whether the people who dwell in it are strong, weak, few, or many, whether the land they dwell in is good or bad, whether the cities they inhabit are like camps or strongholds, whether the land is rich or poor, and whether there are forests there or not. Be of good courage and bring some of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the season of the first ripe grapes. So they went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin as far as Rehob, near the entrance of Hamath. And they went up through the south and came to Hebron. Abraham, Shishai, and Talmai, the descendants of Anak, were there. Now Hebron was built 7 years before Zon in Egypt. Now the descendants of Anak were giants. Look at verse 23. Now, then they came to the valley of Eshcol. Now that valley of Eshcol means cluster. And there they cut down a branch with one cluster of grapes. They carried it between the two of them on a pole. They also brought some of the pomegranates and the figs. And the place was called the valley of Eshcol, or the valley because it was a cluster, because of the cluster which the men of Israel cut down. And they returned from spying out the land after 40 days. They spied out the land to go get the report that Moses sent them to see if the land was a good land. And they came with these big, huge clusters of grapes. I mean, you're talking about a giant cluster of grapes, so big that they had to carry it between themselves with pomegranates and figs. So even when they came bearing fruit, saying, yes, you look at one of them grapes, you can tell that's a mighty fine land. Look at verse 25. And when they returned from spying out the land after 40 days. Verse 26. Now they departed and came back to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Showed them, look at these big old fine grapes and these pomegranates and these figs. They showed them the fruit of the land. But look at verse 27. Then they told them and said, we went to the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. And the Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. And the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the banks of the Jordan. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. That's what Caleb said. But the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against these people. They are stronger than we. And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land, which they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature. Look at verse 33. There we saw the giants, the descendants of Anak came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight. And so we were in their sight. We look like a bug to them, and we look like a bug to us. And as a grasshopper, them big giants are going to squash us. We are not able, they're giants. And look what happens. Now, before we read, sum up with chapter 14, it says, I want to read the kingdom dynamics. It says, resisting popular opinion. Leaders' traits. Joshua was continually faced with choices, and most of his decisions went against popular opinion. Yet in each instance, he called on the people to increase their faith in God's promise rather than look at the impossible circumstances. The leader does not condition his appeal to the sentiment or the mood of the times. Spiritual advance requires faith, and unbelief will never see beyond the difficulties. Unbelief sees walled cities and giants rather than the presence and power of God. Unbelief looks at obstacles. Faith looks at God. Joshua and Caleb were willing to do the unpopular thing and call the people to positive faith. They led the way into the future by confronting a negative report and helping a new generation rise to serve God in faith. So this brings us to chapter 14, and obviously we're not going to read all chapter 14, but we got a few minutes, and I want you to just go through chapter 14. I hope you've done your homework. It says, after they heard this report in verse 33, they heard that they were like grasshoppers in their own sight.